Angels, what are they? Do they have any roles or responsibilities? In Ezekiel's prophecy, there are mysterious angels identified as the Ophanim, or in translation, wheels. Angels are mentioned in the book of Genesis, where we read about the angels calling Abraham in the Akkad of Isaac, appearing in Jacob's dream, and Jacob's struggle with an angel, and many other examples. Angels are spiritual beings without physical characteristics whose mission is to carry out various tasks as God's messengers. Each angel is programmed to perform certain missions. For example, Michael is entrusted with missions that manifest God's grace. Gabriel carries out God's severe judgments, and Raphael is charged with the responsibility of healing. There are angels who were created for a specific mission and, upon completion of that mission, stop to exist. This brings us to the most mysterious angels in the Bible. Their story begins when the prophet Ezekiel sees in his prophecy the divine chariot, with its holy animals, lightning, sapphire stone chair, and finally, an outstanding appearance, a picture of God's glory. This appearance, known as the Chariot Act, became a code name for the content of the Jewish mystical world, the secret world, which only the wise can understand. But what did Ezekiel really witness? Chapter 1 of Ezekiel is one of the most extraordinary chapters in the Bible. The prophet Ezekiel stands on a river in Babylon when the heavens open, and he sees visions that are described in fantastic detail and that are not described anywhere else in the Bible: seraphs, animal faces, lightning, electricity, Ophanim, and Tarshish. Preoccupation with every detail may cause one to miss the big picture, the great significance of the chariot in the book of Ezekiel. The appearance of the chariot that Ezekiel sees is meant to enable him to understand important messages later on. In chapters 8 to 11 of the book, Ezekiel goes through an unusual experience. An angel takes him on a flying journey from Babylon to the land of Israel. Ezekiel receives a virtual tour of the streets of Jerusalem and the temple. And at each stop he encounters various forms of increasingly serious idolatry. Chapter 10 describes the terrible consequences of these acts. Afterward, Ezekiel sees the same chariot he had seen at the beginning of his life on a river. Each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One face was that of a cherub, the second the face of a human being, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. Then the cherubim rose upward. These were the living creatures I had seen by the Kebar River. Ezekiel 10 verse 14 to 15. At first, Ezekiel saw them inside the temple. Now the cherubim were standing on the south side of the temple when the man went in, and a cloud filled the inner court. Ezekiel 10 verse 3. But then something happens, the wheels begin to move, and the cherubs start to leave the house's doorstep. Those cherubim carry the glory of God on their backs. Then the glory of the Lord departed from over the threshold of the temple and stopped above the cherubim. Ezekiel 10 verse 18. The chariot does not stop and continues to travel, carrying the glory of God outside the temple. While I watched, the cherubim spread their wings and rose from the ground, and as they went, the wheels went with them. They stopped at the entrance of the east gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of the God of Israel was above them. Ezekiel 10 verse 19. The prophet realized that the same chariot he had seen in the river was the one carrying the divine presence, and it was now leaving the temple. From that moment on, the temple was like an empty shell. 6 years before the destruction of Babylon, the glory of God had already departed from the habitation. To understand additional layers in the meaning of the chariot, one must know another important debate that took place in those years in the land of Israel, with the prophet corresponding to Ezekiel, the prophet Jeremiah. In Jeremiah's debate with the false prophet Hananiah ben Azor, Hananiah claimed that, "Within 2 years I will bring back to this place all the articles of the Lord's house that Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon removed from here and took to Babylon." Jeremiah 28 verse 3. He promised the people that redemption would come within 2 years, and that everything would return to the way it was, thus proving the prophecies of Jeremiah's wrath to be untrue. This prophecy had an exact date. In the 5th month of that same year, the 4th year, early in the reign of Zedekiah king of Judah, the prophet Hananiah son of Azur, who was from Gibeon, said to me in the house of the Lord in the presence of the priests and all the people. Jeremiah 28 verse 1. What happens 2 years later? We do not receive an explicit answer in the book of Jeremiah, but rather in the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel's prophecy, in which he flew to Jerusalem and saw the departure of the divine spirit from the temple, occurred on the exact date given in the verses of the 6th year of Zedekiah, 2 years after the false prophecy of Hananiah, son of Azur, discovered that not only did the golden vessels not return, but there was another critical worsening on the way to destruction: the divine spirit left the temple. In fact, there is a spiritual dialogue here between two prophets, who are prophesying at the same time, but in places very far apart, Jeremiah in Jerusalem and Ezekiel in Babylon. There are similarities between the two prophecies, as if they are reading from the same page of messages. This is also the case, for example, in the relationship between Jeremiah and Ezekiel to the concept according to which those who are far from the land are also far from God, a concept that they both strongly oppose. To end the prophecy on an optimistic note, we will return to Ezekiel, who sees the chariot once more. After seeing her in the river and then leaving the habitation, Ezekiel also saw the chariot in his prophecy of the future temple. This chariot symbolized the return of the divine spirit to the holy house. Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant with his glory. The vision I saw was like the vision I had seen when he came to destroy the city, and like the visions I had seen by the Kebar River, and I fell face down. The glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east. Ezekiel 43 verses 1-4. The 4 animals standing before the holy throne represent the 4 elements: the lion, fire; the bull, earth; the man, air; and the eagle, water. The roots of matter lie in God, and the holy animals are the angels of the 4 elements. Each of these 4 animals is considered as king. The lion is the king of beasts. The bull is the king of cattle. And the eagle is the king of birds. The man was created to reign over all these kings and to be the sovereign who guards all forms of life. According to the Jewish interpretation, the bull, the eagle and the lion are responsible for the senses of hearing, sight, smell, brain, heart and lungs. Man, as the crown of creation, corresponds to the ability to speak. When he faces them, these organs and senses work to elevate him to even loftier heights. At the top of the hierarchy of sacred animal angels is Metatron, the prince of the interior. He is the only one who sees God face to face and who spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. No human being, not even the most exalted one, can come into direct contact with God, as God is a consuming fire that will instantly turn him to ashes. There is always a need for a mediator who is able to speak to mankind on behalf of God. Even if the Bible states that God spoke to Abraham, Jacob, Moses, or any other prophet, it was actually not God himself, but his messenger. This is the exact meaning of the word angel, which means messenger. The prophet Ezekiel describes in his book a vision of Ophanim of terrifying height and diameter, revolving around the holy animals. When the sacred animals rose from the ground, the Ophanim were carried with them. Wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them. Because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When the creatures moved, they also moved. When the creatures stood still, they also stood still, and when the creatures rose from the ground, the wheels rose along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Ezekiel 1 verse 20-21. The holy animals went where God urged them to go, and the wheels were carried with them, as the spirit of the holy animals stood in the way. The holy animals fulfill the commandments of the Holy Spirit, and we hope you learned something new today. If you did, give this video a like and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more informative and entertaining content. See you next time.